Hello and welcome to Crucible of Words for more dedicated legacy action. Today we are playing some SLIPNOUGHT. This is a Phyrexian Dreadnought deck that is mono blue, using cards such as Slip Out the Back to get your Phyrexian Dreadnought into play. So in case you're unfamiliar, Phyrexian Dreadnought is a 1 mana 12/12 trampler. It has the slight downside of that when it enters the battlefield you have to sacrifice it unless you sacrifice any number of creatures with total power 12 or greater. So obviously we're not doing that. What we're trying to do is stop this trigger from happening. So the way we do that is stifle. So we just stifle this trigger. We can also cast Dress Down and then play the Dreadnought into it, and then it won't have that ability. Or we can play it, then with the ability on the stack, we can slip it out the back. So we don't have anything to sacrifice, then it comes right back. That is the plan. However, the newest set, Murders at Carlo of Mana, has a new card for this, which is kind of interesting. So this is Cryptic Coat. It's a 3 mana artifact equipment. Equipped creature gets +1/+0 and can't be blocked. There is no way of equipping this to a creature, but what it does do is when it enters the battlefield, you cloak the top card of your library. So what that means is you take the top card of your library and place it face down on the battlefield, and then this becomes attached to it. It also, when you cloak something, it has Ward 2. So we'll get a 2/2 with Ward 2, which is pretty good. And you can turn it face up at any time for the mana cost if it's a creature. So what we can do is, brainstorm or ponder to set up a Phyrexian Dreadnought on top of our library, Cryptic Coat it, and then we have this 13 power guy and we just pay 1 mana to flip it because it will have the +1 from the coat. That is pretty tasty. What we also get is a recurring threat from Cryptic Coat because you can bounce Cryptic Coat for 2 mana. So it's a 3 mana 3/2 that can't be blocked with Ward 2, which is not actually a terrible rate for Legacy. It's not going to be like blowing the format away, but it's not an unrespectable threat, that's for sure. So we can get our 3/2 going, and we can just return this to our hand and go again when we've got 5 mana or whatever, or we can bounce at end of turn, play it in our turn, and just keep accruing cards this way. So every iteration gives us another 2/2, and then sometimes it will find us like a creature that we can flip. Sometimes it'll find a creature that we're probably not flipping in the form of Murktide Regent, but that's fine. Speaking of Murktide Regent, this is the other threat in our deck, basically. We're very all in on Dreadnought and Murktide Regent, but that's fine. That's what our deck's kind of designed to do. Cryptic Coat hopefully sort of plugs the gap there, where you normally say something like a Delver of Secrets, perhaps. We do have 1 Brazen Borrower, which can obviously beat down 2, but this is also one of our only ways of interacting with something once it's on the battlefield. Now, because we're a mono blue deck and we're not good at interacting with things on the battlefield, we're trying to stop things getting onto the battlefield that cause us a problem. So we've got 4 Force of Will, 4 Daze, Force of Negation, and a couple of Minor Missteps. Minor Misstep being very notably good at stopping Swords to Plowshares targeting our Phyrexian Dreadnought, which is going to be a pretty clutch one a lot of the times. Also, Fatal Push, a lot of removal basically gets blanked by Minor Misstep. I'm not sure we should be running Minor Misstep when we could be running Not of This World for our Dreadnought, especially since our Murktide Regent is almost always going to be a 7/7 or greater, which would mean that Not of This World is free. Also, Not of This World is not blue, so it doesn't get hit by Hydroblast. So there's a lot to like from Not of This World over the Minor Misstep, but sometimes Minor Misstep's going to come in handy against other decks. So, we can counter a Lines Like Diamond or whatever, or a Dark Ritual when we're not actually going after removal spells. But that's something to think about. I did play a mono blue Dark Depths Phyrexian Dreadnought Murktide Regent deck. Basically, a load of threats that all get protected by Not of This World. I played that in December, and that was actually surprisingly good. I think we 4-1 with it, and it felt quite strong, and I'll probably revisit that at some point. But for now, we're just doing sort of the new iteration of Cryptic Coat SLIPNOUGHT. We do have 4 Wastelands because we are a relatively aggressive tempo deck. We're just trying to smash this down, keep our opponent off balance for a turn or 2 with, Daze's Force of Will and stuff until this crunches through. We have a lovely basic land mana base with 1 Mystic Sanctuary. So we get a reason to actually run our fetch lands to make our Brainstorms and things better because we have the Mystic Sanctuary for later on. So that's quite nice. And obviously having a load of basic lands means that we get some interesting tools in the sideboard, like Back to Basics. And also means you don't have to worry about Wastelands, which is quite nice. We've got a couple of Hydroblasts. There's so many red decks we need to deal with right now. We've got a couple of Hullbreachers, so we can try and slow down our opponent's draws if they're, trying to draw a bunch of extra cards, that sort of deck. This can be a real parity breaker. We've got some Graveyard Hate in our Surgical Extractions, and we've got a Grafdigger's Cage. Love seeing the one of Grafdigger's Cage, to be honest. I think it's a really useful tool. Although I am curious how this operates with Cryptic Coat, actually. That's interesting. I'm not sure how this operates with Cryptic Cloak, but then again, when we are playing this, it's going to be about stopping our opponent from putting Grizzlebrands and stuff into play turn 1, so it's not exactly... We're not going to mind if it makes our Cryptic Coat slightly worse. Then we have a couple of Null Rods. Again, this is going to make our Cryptic Coat worse, but for the matchups we need this, we really need it, like all the sort of one-ring combo decks or like the Epic Storm, stuff like that. We've got another way of interacting with creatures that enter the battlefield in Brazen Borrower, as well as some Dismembers. So we do want a little bit of removal on our 75, because we're not always going to be able to reliably counterspell everything. We do have one more Force of Negation when we do want to try and reliably counterspell more things. And that's it, that's a deck. That's some beautiful SLIPNOUGHT action. As you can tell, I love a good pun, so the name of this deck fills me with joy. Let's go to the games. Remember to like and subscribe, and let's make a Dreadnought wearing a fancy cloak. If you're looking to play Legacy on MTGO like me, why not try Card Hoarder? They're a rental service that I personally use, and I found them better than other rental services that I've used in the past. So why not give them a try? Our opening hand has no mana sources, so pretty easy mulligan. This hand doesn't seem amazing, but I think we're probably going to keep it. We can bin off one of these Polluted Deltas and just work our way towards a Murktide Regent. We can turn one Brainstorm to hide from discard spells, or to just be mana efficient because we want to try and stick a load of stuff in the graveyard and get this Murktide up and running as quick as possible. Ancient Tomb for our opponent, so we might be casting a Brainstorm in response to a Chalice of the Void, but we'll see. This dress down might be quite useful if we're against a Goblin matchup, as long as we can get to turn 2. Shadow Skull Smashing. This could be mono red, or it could mono red like Prison, or it could be mono red Goblins. Chalice of the Void. I would like to Brainstorm in response. A Force of Will is pretty good here. I'll put this land on top and this Polluted Delta, and we'll draw the Delta in a second. Let's say no to this. Are we going to get rid of the Ponder or the Brainstorm? So the thing about the Brainstorm is we can hold this or dress down up if we take the Brainstorm. So I think that might be better than taking the Ponder here. Chalice of the Void is not a card we have a great time against, so we can cut that right out. Okay. We just want to fire off some cantrips and get our Murktide Regent on the go. City of Traitors. A Blood Moon. We don't actually care about this one. We'll fire off a Brainstorm here. We know one card on top of our library right now. We don't need 2 Murktide, so that can go back. I would like to keep this slip out the back, I think. More so than another island. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Actually, if we put this slip out the back, we can just make a Murktide Regent next turn. And crack this. Get ourselves an island. And then the Blood Moon resolves. So that kind of halves our opponent's mana pretty much. Alright, let's just make a big dragon. Alright, we've got a 6/6. That's normally quite hard for these mono red decks to deal with. And we can hopefully just crunch through 3 times and end the game. We've got a dress down that we can potentially use soon. Broadside Bombardiers. Okay. They can't throw anything that can blow up our Murktide Regent. Not yet, at least. If they do play something that can, we can just dress this down before its attack so it doesn't get the ability to throw anything. And we have the Superior Clock right now. Right, we'll play one of these. We'll keep the other one for Brainstorm purposes. Let's just crash for 6. Opponent's got 1 card in hand. If they play something with CMC4, then we can dress it down in response to something like a Caves of Chaos Adventurer. That way they won't get the initiative, and they also won't get 2 Broadside Bombardiers. Is this something I care about? So we take 4 this turn. So we take 4, 5, 6 this turn. And then next turn we take another 4. And then we take another 5. So that'll put us to 1. Is this worth tapping down for a turn? Or should we hold this for next turn when they go for the big turn? Yeah, if they want to sacrifice something this turn, a Chalice of the Void for 0. So this is just going to be throwing 4 damage at our face. Interesting. I think this is fine. So we take 8 damage this turn, but then next turn we can dress down so they don't get to throw anything. And that should end the game. Oh, they're just sacking... They're going to sack a Bombardiers and a Chalice. That's interesting. That is interesting. Okay. I was not expecting this line, but it makes sense. Okay, so we now need to find a threat here. Minor Misstep. That's not really the one we want. So we could fire off this Dress Down in the hopes of finding a Dreadnought right now. But if we don't find a Dreadnought, that doesn't seem very good. I'm not sure this Minor Misstep is going to do us the world of good. So our opponent can hit us for 4 this turn. Goblin Rabblemaster. I think this is an acceptable one to dress down right now. Well, if we dress down into a Dreadnought, that's going to feel terrible. But we're going to take so much damage if we don't do this. A Ponder. Okay, that's certainly going to help us find some more business. So we just take 2 this turn. They can't throw anything at us. But next turn they can hit us for 2, 4, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Yeah, I think us not dressing down last turn, I just didn't expect the Bombardier to throw us. Cryptic Coat. We don't really have a lot of removal here. But I think we're kind of free to fire off this Ponder. Phyrexian Dreadnought. Stifle. This is not going to help us, unfortunately. We could take the Stifle. And we could stifle our opponent's Broadside Bombardier's trigger. What does that actually do for us? If we... Okay, so we put the Stifle on the bottom. Then we put the Dreadnought in the middle. So that's going to be on top when we Cryptic Coat. And then we have this Stifle here. We say no to this. We draw the Stifle. We play this. We play out Cryptic Coat. So this puts a Dreadnought underneath it. So we have a 1 mana 12/12 available. And our opponent is on 12 life here. So we can block the Rabblemaster. So they shouldn't be able to kill us here. They'll be dealing us 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 damage. I make it here. Let's see if they're not attacking with the Rabble. They are attacking with the Rabblemaster. Sure. So, are they going to try and kill our friend? They are. They're going to pay for the ward. They're going to have a real bad time in a second. Boop. There you go. 13-12. That should be the game, I think. Unless our opponent's 1 card is very, very good here. So we have lethal on the backswing. We'll gob this up while we can. We get an 8 here. We also, our creature can't be blocked while it's wearing the coat. So, all right. Very exciting, that one. Okay, so our opponent is playing Mono Red Prison. I would very much like to have some Hydroblast. I think a Brazen Borrower would not go amiss. These Dismembers, our opponent's creatures are pretty strong, so we're probably going to want these. Force of Negation is interesting for some of these lock pieces that can really jam us up. So these are things I'm interested in. I don't think Daze is going to be that good on the draw here, so I think we can get rid of those. We have a lot of 1-drops here. A lot of 1-drops. Chalice of the Void is definitely going to give us a hard time, so we're probably supposed to trim on some of these. Which ones are we trimming on is the question. Like, Slip, Stifle, these are kind of our bread and butter ways of making our big creature. So I think we're supposed to trim on a Ponder and maybe 1 Slip. Because obviously we're not trying to protect our creatures from removal that often. Because our opponent doesn't have that much removal that can kill these things apart from like the 4 mana destroy a bunch of artifacts spell. Alright, I think this is acceptable. There's an argument for bringing in Hullbreacher just because it can come in and block. But I don't think that's where I want to be. Okay. Chalice of the Void is going to be a real pain for us. So we kind of need to keep a hand that can answer Chalice. But we've got 7 turn 0 counter spells. So this hand doesn't have any turn 0 counter spells. I think we have to mulligan this, sadly. Our opponent's also mulliganed. I think we have to mulligan again. Okay, we can keep this. I do not believe we need a Stifle. Or maybe we do need a Stifle. Is that better? That's probably better than the Misstep. Here. But we still need to trim another card. So it's probably this Cryptic Coat. But that's kind of the only thing we've got going on with our hand. But if we take the Stifle here... If we lose the Stifle, then we have some bad top decks in Phyrexian Dreadnought. But we don't really have anything else going on. Is Cryptic Coat going to be too slow here? Interesting choice. I think we're going to get rid of the coat. We don't even have the 3rd land for it yet. And playing like a big Dreadnought is a thing that's just going to roll over our opponent in a couple of turns. I'm not liking our chances on this low card count, but we'll see what we can do. Alright, so this is a card that we need to answer. Does it matter which way? Not really. This way saves us 1 life point, so we're going to do it like this. Our opponent's down to 4 cards now. We're down to 4 cards as well once we've drawn for turn. That's actually pretty good for us. That gives us an answer to something like a Broadside Bombardiers or a Rabble Master is the other one. Which are kind of like the main creatures our opponent's deck's going to be putting down. A lot of these decks are only running the initiative creatures out the sideboard these days, or like 1 main and then 1 in the sideboard. Maybe we get a weird world where the Stifle comes up useful. I'm not just going to fire it off on anything though. This is kind of like a combo piece with our Dreadnought. Alright, which threat? Fable of the Mirrorbreaker. That's an annoying one. That's basically 2 cards for the price of 1 as well as some filtering. We could dismember this creature. It's awkward though. I don't think we are. A Wasteland. That's interesting. So we could Wasteland their red source, kill their shaman and try and strand them with no red mana. I like that. Like, we're on a reduced amount of cards, so we're going to have to try and work something out here. Actually, we should probably wait till our opponent's turn to do this. Because if they play a scarier threat pre-combat, then we get to try and kill that. If we appraise that as the more important thing to deal with here. And we just need to find our little Phyrexian Dreadnought and then we're all good. Alright, how many cards are they going to ditch on their Fable? Just the 1 and it's a Broadside. Okay, in that case we're going to try and kill this. I think we telegraphed that we had a Dismember on our previous turn. So they might have been sandbagging a land to make us be more likely to dismember this. But getting rid of a Broadside probably means that they don't have good options. Unlicensed Hearse. Okay. That's only a problem when they get a creature to crew it, which they will have next turn off of this Fable. It's going to make Murktide more difficult to cast. But what we want to do is just smash a big Phyrexian Dreadnought into play. And hopefully we'll draw one now, but we'll see. That is not the one. We will play out the second land, and we'll pass a turn. We have Force of Will available if something really sketchy happens that we need to deal with. But at present, we are just looking at taking some damage off this Fable. So they can crew the hearse and attack us if they want to. Chalice the Void, X equals 1. Can we realistically beat this? I don't believe we can. So we have to counterspell this. But that leaves us Hellbent to our opponent's 2 cards and superior board. So I believe our opponent is odds on to win this one. Alright, they're just going to eat our graveyard to stop Murktide rather than getting in the damage. I think that is a correct play. Because Murktide is something that could just absolutely run this game. This Brazen Borrower isn't the worst, but it's also not the best. So we can bounce this hearse and reset the counters on it, which is reasonable, but it's only doing a little bit of work for us at the end of the day. Fable of the Mirrorbreaker. Yikes. That's pretty good one. So we can bounce this token and we've actually got a removal spell here. So we're kind of hoping our opponent tries to copy this. And then we can... Okay, yeah. So we can get a nice little advantage here. Now our opponent can crew the hearse in response, which is pretty good. But I think just getting this token off the board permanently is better than nothing here. I think it's better than just the tempo bounce on the hearse, but we might end up regretting that later on. Yep, there's the crewing. They lose a token. We got a little bit of free damage off that Ancient Tomb. Our opponent's life total getting closer to the old 12, which is what we want. For one big crunch, but we're going to take 4 here. So we're very much under the gun. Alright, that's half the battle right there. Can we find one of our, what, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 cards I think we have that can allow us to put this Dreadnought into play? One of them requires us to wait until another turn cycle, which could be disastrous. Alright, they're just exiling rather than attacking, that's fine. I think they're just going to attack with the reflection here. They're valuing keeping our graveyard down. They're willing to give us another draw step to do so. Although I guess getting the 2 in here And this next turn can be lethal. Okay, this doesn't really do the things we need it to do. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So they have lethal this turn once the mirror flips. So, will they just crew the hearse and try and end the game? Looks like they're going to do exactly that. If I attack with both these creatures, we die. Yeah, that's the game. Okay, let's go to game 3. I feel a bit better on the play, and hopefully we won't have to mulligan that low. Daze becomes better when we're on the draw, so let's have a consideration of this. Sorry, when we're on the play, not on the draw. I think this is going to be better than the Minor Missteps, which they're good against, like a Pitchcast Fury. We're not that worried about, so yeah, I don't think the Minor Missteps where we want to be. Just countering some fast mana that can sometimes be good. What do we want to do with these other 2 Dazes? How would we like to fit them in? We could trim on some cantrips. I don't think we want to go any lower on Phyrexian Dreadnought though. Like things that make Phyrexian Dreadnought work. Going lower on coat. We could trim on a Murktide Regent if we're worried about the... Yeah, we could trim on a Murktide Regent because we're a little bit worried about the hearse. We can have 3 Dazes in, that seems fine. Well, my best threat is probably the Dreadnought in this matchup. No lands again, let's mulligan. Very funny deck. That is a land, but it's not the one we want. Okay, we can keep this. So, one of these things. The Borrower allows us to get through a Chalice after a fashion. The Stifle is probably not where we need to be right now, and neither is the Murktide. Not feeling great about this 5. We will need a threat, but I'd rather have cards that like can do something and replace themselves and get us where we need to be. The best way to win this game is by just smashing down a Dreadnought on like turn 2 or 3 and just riding that to victory. Alright, here is our basic island and we will pass. If our opponent fires off a Chalice, we will have to Brainstorm, but we've got forces that we can hit, but we also have Dazes, which will be a lot less costly because we lose a little bit of tempo, but we won't lose 2 cards to answer it. Shatter Skull, the Hammer Pass. Alright. We're seeing a Chalice where X equals 1. Well, we're definitely going to cast this Brainstorm so we at least get the value of casting that. And then we can see what we find here. So I don't particularly want to draw a 1-drop at this point. So I guess we throw this back. And we'll draw this Polluted Delta next turn. This comes in. We can bounce this on the crucial turn to get our Dreadnought in. But we might need quite a lot of mana to get everything working the way we want it to. I guess we could dress down, end step, untap, Borrower, Dreadnought. Need to find a Dreadnought, but that's a problem for another day. Or another turn at least. Our opponent invested some resources into that though. Because they had to pitch a Spirit Guide, so it was at least 2 cards for that Chalice. A Rabble Master. We dress this down, it saves us 1 point of damage. We dress down next turn, it saves us a lot more. We could have dressed down and hit a Daze, but I think we're better off taking 1 this turn instead of trying to high roll into a Daze. Like, I don't even know if I want to pitch a Force for this. Like, maybe we would have to, but it doesn't feel great because we kind of want to win the game, not just delay our losing the game. We would have hit the Daze, of course. Right, what was our opponent going to put into play this turn? A Broadside Bombardiers. Let's play this. Force of Will. I think that is worth pointing out, this Bombardiers. That is a scary Magic the Gathering card right there. And now we just take 3 instead of 3, 4, 5, 6. So we half the damage we've taken this turn by playing this dress down. Now our next dress down has to be trying to cast us a Phyrexian Dreadnought, otherwise we're going to fall apart. Murktide Regent though. Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Right, so we do have to crack this. We're going to use our full mana here just so we can have the more cards in our graveyard for future Murktide Regents if we get there. Gone. Return target creature to its owner's hand. So glad we left another card in, but that's not going to be amazing for us right now. So we're going to get bashed for, what, 6 this turn? If I can do maths. Oh, look at that, I did maths. Okay. Yeah, so this Chalice is jamming us up. This Dress Down isn't doing us any favours either right now. Like, it's going to keep us alive. We could also bounce the Rabble Master at the beginning of combat. But then how are we ever getting rid of this Chalice? We've got options, but they're not great options. See what our opponent does here. Right, 3 mana. A Trinisphere. If we bounce the Rabble Master, they can't recast it this turn unless they have another land. Then we get 1 spell a turn. This can keep us alive, but I'm not feeling great about this one. Kind of need to tread water and get this Murktide online. But that's really hard to do underneath the Trinisphere. We take 2 down to 5. They play that guy next turn. We take 3 down to 2. Cryptic Coat. Actually, pretty good here. I will take it. You never know, we might hit a Dreadnought. We hit a Force of Negation. That cannot be turned into a creature, but we have the biggest creature on board. If they play a Rabble Master, they have to attack with all their guys, so we get to kill one of these tokens and take 2 damage. I think our opponent's still likely to do that, but they might be concerned that we have a Phyrexian Dreadnought under here, which can jam them up a little bit. Well, obviously we don't, but they don't know that. Yeah, this Cryptic Cloak was a pretty good draw, as it turns out. Yep, so there's a Rabble Master we know about. We take 2, kill one of their guys. Next turn we have to take 2 again. Or actually we take 3 next turn, right? If they attack with everything. Yes, we're going to need a little bit of help. But the Dress Down can do that for us. Can stop them making another token. Oh, another Dreadnought. This Chalice is brutal. We have a plan. It's not a great plan, but it's the only one we got. Oh no, what is this? A Goblin Rabble Master. Alright. Let's Dress Down now. Force of Will. Like, we have to Force of Will this, otherwise we're probably losing the game. So... Oh no, we can't Force of Will this because of the Trinisphere, right? Yeah, okay, so we probably are just losing the game. But this comes in. They get to choose how they attack now. Right, they're coming in with these 2. That's interesting. So... we block here. And take this guy out. We go to 2. What are we hoping to draw here? That is a very fine question. Why is our sideboard not running Chill is also another fine question. In this day and age, a Wasteland, that's not going to cut it. GG's opponent, we got, actually no, we can make 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So we can put a Murktide into play. We can block here, but then we take 3 and die. So, yeah. We were always 1 piece behind, but we did mulligan to 5 twice. I think if we kept a 7-card hand, we'd probably win here. But I think the margins are a little bit tight. We just didn't quite get there. Like, a single Phyrexian Dreadnought that gets to actually stick around is lights out. Okay, let's go to round 2. Right, we're on the play. I don't really want to keep a hand like this. So we're going to mulligan it. If this was an island, I could maybe consider this, but oh yikes, we're having bad mana times again. Sure, we'll keep this. I think we're probably just burning these 2 cards. And we're going to, because we're just going to play on basic islands anyway, we're going to do this now before we have to worry about anything like a Stifle. And we'll pass with Stifle up, as well as a Brainstorm. So we can try and Brainstorm into Daze if we need to. A Lotus Petal. Alright. What flavour of Lotus Petal deck is this? An Urza's Saga. Okay. An Emery Lurker of the Lock. Do I want to Brainstorm into this? Not really, because the Daze is not going to work here. So I guess we just let this Emery hit. We could Stifle the activated ability, but I'd rather make a massive creature. Not a big fan of this Shadow Spear. So we've got a Wasteland for our opponent's Urza's Saga. Are we Brainstorming now? I think so. Okay, a Cryptic Coat. I like that. For the future. So this is next turn is going to be a Wasteland and a Stifle probably. And then we would draw a Wasteland, so I guess we put the coat on the bottom for now. Untap. Goes on the Wasteland, play the Wasteland. Take out the Saga. And pass. So we've got the ability to stifle something. So we can stifle an enemy trigger, but I don't think we care that much about them. Like, that's just going to stop them drawing one card. Doesn't feel amazing when we could use that to make a 12/12 creature that our opponent will probably struggle to deal with. We have an emergency Brainstorm if we need it, where we get to see 2 fresh ones. But I don't really think that's what this game is about. We've got a Wasteland for the next Urza Saga. They're getting a Bauble. There is a Bauble. There is an Otawara. One of their few answers to a resolved Phyrexian Dreadnought. Obviously they can counterspell the Dreadnought, or they can counterspell the spell that makes the Dreadnought work. So it can be a touch awkward for us. Sure, Thoughtcast. Our opponent's kind of slowly starting up their engines, but they're not really getting anywhere exciting. We can strip away their Otawara. They can just get blue mana off this petal. I'm more concerned about Urza Saga, so I'm just going to play out... I'm going to play out this Brainstorm first, is the question. If we play out the Brainstorm first, we might be able to set up a Cryptic Coat for next turn. I think I like that. Right, let's Brainstorm. Okay, that's not really what we want to see. I think we're going to chuck back an island and a fetch. And now we can play the fetch and shuffle away that island if we need to. And we've got Force of Will up if there's something like a Kappa Cannoneer we have to fight over. Which means we're probably pitching the Stifle and just going into Cryptic Coat. Yeah, so there's a good reason why we didn't Wasteland their blue source. They've just got another one. We need to stop the actual Urza Saga, because that's one of the ways they win the game. Them not playing an Urza Saga means you can use this Wasteland for mana on the next turn, and then when we untap, we can then have it for future sagas. Right, there's a Bauble. They haven't cracked them, which makes me think... Okay, they are cracking this one. A Wasteland. They've seen the Wasteland, okay. I'm going to say, they didn't crack the previous one, which makes me think they might be working towards Kappa Cannoneer. Yeah, this is the Kappa Cannoneer. We need to hope that the last cards in their hand are not Force of Will blue card. It was not. Okay, that's pretty good. So we will fetch this. We don't want the basic island on top of our library. We can go and fetch the basic island off the top of our library with this, but we don't want to be drawing it for turn. Let's get Cryptic. They know that this is just a blind card off the top as well. Alright, which one is this? A Brazen Borrower. That's actually a creature. So we could start clocking for 4 damage instead. But 3 mana is a lot of mana to pay for +1 damage a turn. Alright, so they're getting back their Kappa Cannoneer. Yep. Okay, and this is something they can stick a Shadow Spear on. Like, maybe we can hold up the Dress Down for a turn. But I think what we're going to try and do is use the Dress Down to block their Kappa Cannoneer when the time is right. But we'll see. A Ponder. I think I would very much like to cast a Ponder here. Brainstorm, Brainstorm, Force of Will, Ponder. Okay. We can't quite make this... if we Brainstorm... That doesn't actually help us here, does it? But we'd very much like to draw this Murktide Regent. Because that's a creature that can block the Kappa Cannoneer, depending on how big things get. So we're going to want this Brainstorm so that we get to cast this first and make our Murktide Regent bigger. So we can cast this now and make a land drop. A Minor Misstep. So I think we put the Dress Down on top and then the Murktide. Play this out. We're probably not blocking with this guy, so let's crash for 3. We do need to whittle our opponent's life total down eventually. So this Shadow Spear is going to be annoying, but the way layers work means that the Dress Down should counteract the lifelink and the +1/+1 if it's already equipped when I play the Dress Down, but I'm no layers expert. Patchwork Automaton. That is not something we get to counter with our Minor Misstep. A Mox Opal. This is something we get to counter with our Minor Misstep. Is this what we're trying to counter right now? Would you rather counter a card draw? I'd rather counter the card draw here. Right, this Cannoneer is getting large. There's an island. So they can activate their Emery to grow their Kappa Cannoneer. So they're going to cast this Bauble, which will pump their Patchwork, which we can't stop. But we can... This makes it slightly harder for this Kappa Cannoneer to outgrow our Murktide. Yeah. So they're going to crack us for 9. Then we're going to have to double block their Cannoneer with our Cloak and our Murktide Regent next turn. But we won't be able to do that because we get to play the Murktide Regent this turn, and then the next turn is the dress down, so it's not enough. Yeah, no, our opponent's just got us here. Their cards are just higher raw power than what we're putting out. But Null Rod is a pretty tasty one. Hullbreacher is a tasty one. Back to Basics is pretty tasty here. The Borrower is fine against some things. Force of Negation is pretty reasonable. Like, all of these cards have some amount of utility, even the Grafdigger's Cage to stop Emery. I think Grafdigger's Cage is probably better than the Save Extractions if we're trying to deal with Emery. So, what do we not want here? I think we're going to take out our Cryptic Coats. We're bringing in the 3-drop threat in Hullbreacher and bringing in Null Rods. That seems pretty straightforward. Now, our opponent is a Chalice deck, which means you probably don't want to lean into these 1-drops that hard. Although, I'm a bit skeptical about boarding out things that help our Phyexian Dreadnought work. Minor Misstep, actively good in this matchup. The Dazes, maybe the Dazes are a little bit weak here. Like, our opponent has a lot of mana over there, so I think maybe we're going to trim that. Trim a couple of Ponders. And then we have to decide, like, we just kind of want to resolve these things, really. Like, the Back to Basics is really good. The Hullbreacher and the Null Rod. These 6 cards are going to be pretty great. Maybe we don't need the Dismembers. Like, we just shut Emery off in other ways. Alright, I can buy that. We've got Wastelands for the Airs of Saga. I prefer Brainstorm over Ponder because it fixes your hand, whereas Ponder kind of smooths out the future. So Brainstorm can just turn a losing game into a winning game, whereas Ponder isn't going to do that big thing. I hope we find a specific thing, but that's about it. Okay, so we can shut off Emery. We can counter Patches. Yeah, I'm down for this. So we're not gonna play anything turn 1. We're gonna hold up this Misstep in case our opponent plays a 0-drop that we feel is worth hitting. And then we can untap into Ponder on the following turn and maybe deploy the Cage as well. If our opponent doesn't play an Emery, there's no urgency with our Cage, and we don't need to do the Cage straight away anyway, because Emery won't be able to tap the first time they cast it. Alright, we'll just crack this now. There's no reason not to. Ancient Tomb from our opponent. Patches. We do not really want to get hit by a Patches here. So I think we will hit this, and we're going to... Do we rather have a second Force of... I think we would. So I'm going to pitch this Misstep now. We need this Ponder to find some more business. A Bauble, that's fine. Another Bauble, also fine. Feels like this was a very Patches-oriented hand. The Mox Opal is a shame that we don't get to counter this, because that would have been like their only blue source. We don't need to play the Grafdigger's Cage, there's no Emery online yet. Let's Ponder. A land, which is quite nice. A Hullbreacher would be nice if we have more land. Step out the back, not actually good. So this has to be a shuffle. A Wasteland. I will play this Wasteland, and I will try and cut our opponent's plan out from underneath them. Now that could backfire if they have an Urza's Saga, which they're immediately going to play because that's how this game works. Yep, there we go. But we have the dress down to clear the Saga tokens, so it's not the end of the world. If we didn't have the dress down, then I definitely don't waste down there. But I think it's worth it. It ended up not being worth it, I guess. But okay, so that's a blue card that we can pitch. Let's get this Cage down. So that stops Emery, but they don't have an Emery draw, so whatever. So they're going to play a mana source so they can make some tokens. We're going to dress down them if we can find a land. If we can't find a land, then this game's lost anyway. I guess this game might be lost anyway. I'm having a rough time with the lands in this deck today. Alright, so they're going to make a large creature, and then they're going to make another large creature. Like, if we want to, we can try and slip this construct out the back to buy us some life. I don't think that's where I want to be here. We just need to draw a mana. Right, Spell Bomb, pretty good against the old Dreadnought. We go through all that hoopla, and then they just go, nope. Right, so this is a large portion of our life total. We are dead if we do not find a land. Now, we did use a Wasteland earlier, so it could be on us. But at that moment in time, we had an option to potentially stop our opponent getting anywhere. Right, I will just hit this and try and take the wind out of our opponent's sails a little bit. Land. We found the land. Okay. So we have the Dress Down. We will do this in our opponent's turn because they are a deck that runs Force of Negation. Whether or not they're running it in this configuration against us right now, I don't know. We can defend our Dress Down using Force of Will. Having the Dress Downs versus the Urza Saga deck is pretty handy. Alright. Oh, that's a very nice one. That will shut our opponent's entire board down apart from that card. If we draw a land, we get to Wasteland them, and here's the Capcannoneer. So this has to eat a counterspell or we lose, pretty much. They got forced to come back. They do not. Okay. I land off the top here, and we're in pretty good shape here. So we get to take our opponent's blue source, and okay, we didn't hit the land. We're still going to cast this card, which is going to be pretty backbreaking for our opponent. But they can still cast a Capcannoneer if they've got one. Yeah, see, this is the problem. By not drawing the land, we didn't get to take out their blue source. They just get to make the Capcannoneer here. And we're not really beating this. Certainly not on the clock we've got right now. We don't have the Dismembers in, not that we could pay ward for anyway. Another Null Rod isn't really helping us out here, but I guess we play anyway. Yep, I think we were just undone by our mana here. We had to take 8 because we missed a land drop. And then we didn't get to take out their cannon. Okay, they had another island, so the Null Rod wouldn't have shut them down as much. They still get to improvise using artifacts. There is an Emery. That doesn't do anything under the Grafdigger's cage. But it does attack for 1. It's unlikely to matter, but you never know. So what? We ponder here, and then what can we realistically ponder into? Nothing that I can make here. Yeah, our mana base betrayed us pretty hard there. Not necessarily our mana base, just the fact that we couldn't draw them. I think we've got a reasonable amount of lands in our deck. If we look here, 19 lands, including the Wastelands, is the normal number you would play in this deck. So maybe we're just getting unfortunate. Alright, on to round 3. So this hand is a keep in terms of lands and spells that we can actually cast. But what does it do is the question. We are relatively threat light. There's no cantrip here to find another threat. Like, we answer 1, maybe 2 things, and then what? I think we have to mulligan. We need a plan. Alright, this is the plan. We throw back a basic island. Say done. Like, Brainstorm and Cryptic Coat is potentially a pretty lethal combo. But we might not have the time to do that, depending on what we need to use our cantrips for. Murktide Regent. That is a blue card that we can pitch to our Force of Will, and we'll try and set up the Cryptic Coat next turn. But there is a little bit of tension. Okay, so we're probably Wastelanding next turn instead. Urza Saga, Misty Rainforest is an interesting combination. Alright, let's just say no to their Urza Saga and continue playing the game like this. So, the interesting thing with Brainstorm and Cryptic Coat is we have to do our fetch land before we Brainstorm, and then if there isn't a Dreadnought, then it's bad. So it's kind of an awkward one. It's going to depend on what our hand looks like when we want to fire off this Brainstorm. What is this? The Zav, Wearer of Faces. Blue-black, 2/3. When it attacks, exile target card from a graveyard, then investigate. When you sacrifice a clue, you may have Lazav become a copy of a creature card exiled with it until end of turn. Okay. So we don't really want our Dreadnought. Okay, I think our opponent's a Dreadnought deck. Interesting. I think it's okay to let this one through. Maybe that's a mistake. I don't know. We'll see. It's a 2-power guy. Like, what's the worst that could happen, right? So, we can Brainstorm here, which I think we're going to do. Our hand needs some help. Do I think this Minor Misstep is... Like, our opponent is clearly a Dreadnought deck, so I think this Misstep's going to be good. So I'm going to put back a Daze here. And then I'm going to crack this while our opponent doesn't have Stifle. With their Dreadnought deck, they're very likely to have Stifle in their list. So we've got ourselves a Misstep here. So our opponent's probably discarding cards as well. So they're going to be making their own guys here. So maybe it was a mistake let's resolve. Maybe we should always just counterspell the card that you don't know what it does. We'll see. So they're going to start attacking our Wasteland or our Brainstorm. Okay, they're attacking the Brainstorm for purposes of Murktide Regent. They've seen a Murktide Regent. No, they haven't seen a Murktide Regent, actually. We didn't pitch that. They get to investigate here, which gives them a clue. A Thought Seize. I would like to misstep this, please. I think our opponent might just be playing a better version of the deck that we're playing. Alright, a Saga. We have the dress down for this. A Polluted Delta. So I think the play here is Cryptic Coat. Or we could play a 4/4 Murktide, but I think we'd rather have our Murktide a little bit bigger. Our Murktide underneath our Cryptic Coat. That's not going to get flipped up anytime soon, unfortunately. So we could have things like Hunted Horror as well in our deck if we were like a blue-black deck. That might be better. Yep, so our opponent's got a nice draw engine here now. They attack, make a token, attack, make a token, etc, etc. So you could have things like Careful Study and put like an Archon of Cruelty in. And then they could just turn their creature into Archon of Cruelty or, you know, other things that are equally terrifying. I'll be honest, not seen this Lazav card before in my life. Okay, so we're going to take our Minor Misstep now. We do get to try and trade here. This doesn't have any evasion. And we can bounce our coat and play it again. And kind of get some card advantage that way. Just shut down our opponent's scary card that does weird things. And then we'll try and dress down our way through these as a Saga tokens. They're unlikely to be massive Saga constructs, so we'll probably take the hit, play the end of turn, dress down. That way, if we find a Dreadnought, we can untap, play a Dreadnought, and then we're doing some good work. We can't just equip our coat to anything, because that's not how the coat works. You can't ever equip it. It only gets stuff off the top of your library. Alright, what are you going to find us, deck? Another island. So we can bounce this and we can put the dress down in. So our opponent's going to make a 2/2. Then it's going to become a 3/3. Then it's a 4/4. I think I can take 4 and then end of turn dress down. But we'll see what our opponent does and see if it changes how we want to operate this turn. Lazav also making clues when it attacks means that they get to grow their constructs pretty effectively if they've got that going. Alright. I guess they could Pithy Needle our coat here. Okay, a Phyrexian Dreadnought. They are stifling this trigger. I will. This is a tough one. Like, we might need to fight again with the Daze. So I think it's the Murktide here. I don't really want to fight against this Dreadnought. Force of Will. So let's float a blue mana. Let's counterspell this Stifle rather than the Force here. And we'll bounce this island. So their Dreadnought's going to sacrifice. Alright. Let's get our Cryptic Coat back. We could have bounced this and used it as the blue card. But I think the recurring 3/2 body is actually going to be pretty good here. Because it's kind of like a removal spell. Like, we're going to take 3 here. Beginning and end step. We're going to put this in. That way, if we draw a Dreadnought, we get to do Dreadnought things. Oh, look at that. What a dream. Alright, let's cast the Dreadnought. Our opponent doesn't have a Daze, otherwise we would have Daze to protect their Dreadnought. Okay. What creature did we get under our cloak? A Wasteland. Goodbye, Dreadnought. Now we can replay our Dreadnought. Lazav. Sure. Kind of explains why they're relatively happy to get rid of this one. So this is kind of awkward, because this gets to exile this, and then they pay 2, and then they get a 12/12. So not a massive fan of that for us. Another Dreadnought would be a great draw here. Okay, I think we go to attacks first. I don't think this creature is blocking. Like, we either want to trade and kill this, or not, I guess. Alright, let's dress down. A blue card for our Force of Will, maybe? It is a blue card for our Force of Will. That's pretty tasty. Let's have a Dreadnought. Now we could try and get really fortunate and brainstorm into another Dreadnought and the land, but I don't think that's a great play here. I think we can just block with the Dreadnought against their Lazav/Dreadnought, and it's going to be our card advantage engine versus theirs. Is the Cloak better than the Lazav? I think the Lazav might be better here because they draw a card each turn, whereas we kind of just get a 2/2. And in general, when you're playing Legacy, each card you have is probably better than a 2/2. Yep, so they're going to attack. We will have to block here. This card is cool. If Wizards of the Coast released less products, then I'd be able to actually check the full spoilers for every set more easily and remember what they are. Alright, so we have to block here, otherwise we lose. I don't believe we're brainstorming here. Just gonna keep coating. I wouldn't mind drawing a land. Alright, a ponder. A ponder is better than a brainstorm here. Let's ponder. Our opponent has a guy waiting. Another Cryptic Coat. I don't really want to have to work my way through these lands is the problem. Although, actually, another land is fine and thinking about it, because that gives us the Cryptic Coat and bounce. Alright, let's just keep making 3 mana 3/2s. So that's one of the lands. The next land we draw gives us the 5 mana. It also gives us a Mystic Sanctuary, so we can get back something like a Force of Will if we're in the market for that. They're trying to stifle our Cryptic Coat. Okay. That means you have to draw through both of those lands. Actually, we don't. We can just sack the first one. I don't think that's worth brainstorming over. I'd rather brainstorm our opponent's actual threat. At the moment, we're winning the race. Right, a land. So that's enough so they can cast Brazen Borrower. Or are we going to see something a little sketchier? A Murktide Regent. This is not a thing we want to resolve here. We need our Force of Will to be good here. Daze and we'll bust an enemy Force of Will. Alright. That's pretty terrible news for us. I won't lie. So that's 8 damage. That's quite a lot of damages. So we crack this because you know what top card of our library is. We don't want it. Mystic Sanctuary. Is a ponder better than a regular card? With the amount of mana we have, the answer to that is yes. Oh, actually no. No, because we're going to Cryptic Coat whatever we put on top of our library, aren't we? So this isn't actually a good option for this. So it just has to be a basic island here. So this attacks. It's unblockable, so we don't have to worry about combat mass here in terms of our creature getting blocked. Right. Goodbye, Coat. Come back to our hand. Hello again, Coat. Can you find Phyrexian Dreadnought, please? It found a dress down. That's not a creature, is it? Alright. I'm enjoying this coat. I'm not sure if it's like amazing, but it's fun. It's sort of magic I quite enjoy playing. At times, at least. Alright, so we take 8 this turn. And our opponent has 2 lethal threats next turn. So we need to basically find Brazen Borrower. So we can bounce one guy and then block the other. Because we have the mana to cast both sides of the Borrower. That is our plan. Borrower? Come on. A Brainstorm. That's not really going to cut it, is it? Alright, so let's Brainstorm. A Stifle. A Brazen Borrower. A Stifle doesn't do anything here, does it? We are not going to get there. We can attack for 6 here. But our opponent is on 8. I guess we hope that our opponent makes a mistake. Like, we can't block any of their guys, so we're just going to block here. I don't see why our opponent would... Oh, I should have left one creature back to block. And, like, bluffed having a dress down. Because then our opponent might attack differently. So they're just going to cast this Brazen Borrower here. Alright, we need our opponent to not attack with both of their creatures. They might just attack with the Borrower. In case something goes wrong, but I think they're probably going to attack with both creatures. A Ponder. I think attacking with both creatures is the safe line here. If I was in our opponent's shoes. Yep. Ooh, not quite there. Okay, so what are we doing here? Hullbreacher seems pretty reasonable as an option for us. This kills the Zav, which I'm not opposed to doing. Back to basics might be pretty good here. Borrower, pretty good against dreadnoughts and stuff. Surgically extracting things might prove relatively useful. I'm not sure how much we want to be in the Force of Will camp, given our opponents' like Thought Seizers and stuff like that. It might end up just being a bit awkward for us. Trying to trade 2 for 1. But maybe we need that sort of effect. Yuck. I like Dazes. Like, our opponent just showed us a load of non-basic lands. And they've got Eyes of Saga, so they're going to struggle to fetch basics, I think. I don't really want to take out any of our things that enable our combo, because we just need to make a guy and get there with it. Are we just trimming Ponders again? Like, Misstep is actively good in this matchup as well. Alright, we'll try something like this. I know, I think blue-black is going to be a better spot for where we're at. We answer as a Saga. We can brainstorm and fix our hand. We want to keep a lot of resources because it's going to be a bit of a slogfest, I think. Alright, we know our opponent can run Stifles, so let's just crack this now. Well, we know they've got Stifles. We've seen them. Okay, so we've got a Stifle if we want it. Otherwise, we can brainstorm to fix our hand next turn. We don't want this Mystic Sanctuary stinking up our hand here. I imagine our opponent's either going to cast a cantrip on turn 1 or nothing. I don't think this is our fight with the Stifle. Right, they've got a basic there. Right, let's see how our opponent's Ponder goes. They chose not to shuffle. Right, let's brainstorm. We've got some junk we don't want here. I like the back to basics. Not necessarily at its premiere right now, but it's something we can get round to. So that can go, and I think we're not going to need all of these dress downs. Or is it better than the Stifle? I think we can hold up the Stifle this turn though. So we're holding up Stifle and Dismember. Maybe we're supposed to crack straight away to dodge our opponent's Stifle. Let's see if they want to stifle this. I don't believe they should be stifling our fetch lands when their Stifle is part of their combo. They have 2 basic islands over there, so this back to basics not looking amazing right now. Let's just pass and continue this little dance. A dress down. Interesting. Can't do anything about this unless we try and dress down ourselves, and that's really not helping the situation. Okay. So we're going to see some amount of Phyrexian Dreadnought this turn, I would imagine. There is a Polluted Delta. Our opponent has not got any black mana yet. There is a Phyrexian Dreadnought. Okay. Are we just going to eat it to this Dreadnought? Could well be. Another land. What does this do for us? A whole heap of nothing. So we take 1 hit from this, and we have 1 more turn to string something together. Right, don't particularly like those chances. So we're going to have to fire off this dress down in the end step. That gives us the most chance of drawing a Phyrexian Dreadnought, which is the caliber of card we'll need to beat our opponent's Phyrexian Dreadnought. Brazen Borrower, obviously welcome, but we're going to be taking a large chunk of our life total here. Right, we want to minimize the amount of things we can draw that don't help us out here. Alright, dress down. You're going to be good. Now, our opponent can fight over this, which cuts out one of our potential draws here. A Daze. So the other option is to use a dress down to take the trample off of the Dreadnought and put something in front of it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So we can play a Murktide Regent. Shrink this by 5, so that'll be a 7. And we block 4. We take 3, but we've lost 4 from this. So that doesn't work. Nothing works here. Yeah, we are pretty cold to this. Yeah, I think we just got beaten by the better Dreadnought deck, to be honest with you. Alright, let's see if we can get a win this league. Let's go to round 4. Alright, we finally got a Dreadnought that we can make early here. So we get to ponder on turn 1 and try and find ourselves, like, some interaction for our opponent. Okay, they've gone to 5 cards. They're on the play as well. So maybe we don't even get to keep this hand. There could be like Echo of Eons, or we're going to get shredded by a bunch of stuff. Who knows? Alright, our opponent's on 5. There's a Lotus Petal. It's normally step 1 to things going very wrong for us. I'm going to string a bunch of things together. Okay, Simian Spirit Guide. Just a Fable. Okay, I can live with that. Our opponent's put a lot of resources into that. This is a sort of matchup where, well, if the matchup is what I think it is, like some sort of, I guess Lotus Petal is a bit of an unusual one though. Alright, let's ponder. This Wasteland could prove quite useful. I would very much like a Daze here. And a follow-up Dreadnought is not the worst. So I guess we will have something that looks like this. Daze after our opponent is mulliganed and doesn't have any lands is pretty good. Seasoned Dungeoneer. Okay, so we are the red-white initiative deck. Understood. Next turn we get to make a massive creature. And possibly protect it. Oh, we finally did the SLIPNOUGHT. And then next turn we can do another one if we think that's going to be good. A big 13 power guy. Unlucky for some, I suppose. And also when the Dreadnought comes back, we'll have our ability to slip out the back if they do have a removal spell we wouldn't want to deal with. Alright, here comes our big friend. Let's go to attacks. I think we're better off just making another one here and just gaining the 13 life if that's the thing that happens. Oh wait, that doesn't work, does it? I've made a horrible mistake here. Whoops. It doesn't work the same way as Stifle. Whoops, indeed. That is an awkward one. Alright, our opponent scooped even though we made a little bit of an error there. But they did mulligan to 5 and not have a land for their first turn, so we'll take that. Hydroblast is going to be reasonable here. Dismember is probably not great, but a necessary evil. Possibly we want more Force of Negation just to interact with our opponent early on, because if we don't, we lose. The Minor Missteps aren't going to be that hot here. Don't mind Cryptic Coat. The Dazes. Our opponent is trying to cast 4 drops. So the Dazes are okay, but they fall off quite quickly. So we're going to strip one of these. I don't mind the Borrower either as an option. That does allow us to interact with what our opponent's doing a little bit. And then we need to keep our plan, because that's how we win the game. Make a guy that's bigger than theirs, beat down. We probably don't have time to do Cryptic Coat stuff in this matchup, which is kind of awkward, I guess. But then, like, we're so light on threats if we cut the coats. And this is unblockable, so it can always take the initiative. Alright, we'll trim a couple of ponders, because I'm not sure if we're going to have the time to be pondering for cards that we want. Maybe trim 1 coat. Not enjoying the configuration. This is a list at 5-Oda League. I'm not massively in love with the configuration of it. We'll keep this. We can work towards a Murktide Regent here. We've got a counter spell for like a Chalice on 1, which is kind of going to end us. So we need to make sure that doesn't happen. Our opponent gets 7, so they are doing A-okay. No play on turn 1. A Wasteland would be fine draw here. Not a Wasteland. Okay, let's crack this now. I don't think we need to brainstorm or anything here. We're just going to pass holding up Stifle. But we want to be brainstorming aggressively so that we can fill up our graveyard. And we want to have the chance of making a Dreadnought next turn. So what is this? A Chalice of the Void. I would like to brainstorm first. Okay. So we don't really want this to slip out the back. It's not really doing it for us. And we don't need another land. But we're going to draw it anyway. I think this is a tough call. Like, if we Force of Negation this, it is 2 cards out of our hand. But Daze can hit non-creature spells. But this is on humans, so we're probably not hitting any of the humans anyway. So I think we can get blown out by a Simian Spirit Guide here as well. Are we supposed to just go for something like this, pitching our Daze? I think we are. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So we're 1 mana shy of doing our friend here. We'll crack this now. We don't want to slip out the back. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So next turn we get to make a moderate-sized Murktide. We need to not die here. We can stifle a trigger from the initiative and then Hydroblast it if it's a red creature. Alright, so this is a Caves of Chaos Adventurer. Do we want our opponent to get the initiative is the first question. Do we want our opponent to have the initiative here? Or do we want to try and steal the initiative and just Hydroblast this? That is a tricky call. Alright, I'm going to go for the trying to steal the initiative here and then use a Stifle to maybe protect our Murktide from things like the Solitude here. We will be firing this off early because we're going to be using it for our Murktide. We're not going to try and save this in case they put counters on it. We want to be able to take this out and then have more cards in our graveyard for Murktide Regent. Get out of here. A Dreadnought, that is quite a large creature. This means that the Murktide we play next turn is bigger, and we also play this around Chalice of the Void. So we need our opponent not to remove this right now. But if they do, we still have another threat, but they are ticking up through the Undercity. So they're going to get some scry action here. Come on, I'd love to put a match win on the board. Just don't do anything to our little friend. 2 on the bottom. Okay, that's a good sign for us. Seasoned Engineer. Loran of the Third Path. Yuck! Oh, no. Very rude. Yikes. Oh, Phyexian Dreadnought. Why are you so bad? Okay. Yikes. That is pretty terrible news for us. Force of Will, a little bit late. We'll play this land out because it means that we have access to Mystic Sanctuary if we want it. 3. Well, I think we're just going to make the biggest creature we can here. But we'll play the land out because if we draw a land next turn, we have high cast Force of Will. And then we'll sort of be trading the initiative back and forth, maybe, which isn't great for us, if I'm being honest with you. Because our opponent gets to go to Throwing the Dead 3 somewhere along the lines. Lorana of the Third Path, absolutely jamming us up. Yikes. Alright, we got another human spell coming our way by the looks of things. This looks like a Seasoned Engineer. I would rather have seen that last turn than this turn. But here we go. So they go into Catacombs, they get a Spooky Skeleton. Oh, this is pretty bad news. We don't get dealt damage this turn at least. Right, so we have the high cast Force of Will, but most of their spells are uncountable. That's not amazing. There's no point blocking here because these two we can't block anyway. So we're just going to serve for 7. We get a basic land here. Maybe we're not supposed to put the fetch land in if we're going to get a basic land, actually. That gives us 1 more card for Brainstorm purposes. But by playing the land, it gave us the ability to play around a Solitude that they would cast while we're attacking. So I think we're probably still right to play it. Right, another human. Human are we looking at now? 3 mana. Is this going to be an Archon? No, not an Archon. An Anointed Peacekeeper that we can't counterspell. Do we care about these lands enough? Let's do the math here. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And then they kill us next turn. So it's a 2-turn clock even if we crack this. If we can deal with one of their creatures, I think... Yeah, I think we're just going to let this hit. And the plan is to maybe draw a Borrower and mess the clock up. We could get a Stifle and stifle the trigger here. What do they name? Force of Will, sure. Not that it matters here. So they get to do this and go into Throwing the Dead 3. So the chances of us winning this game, I would put roughly around the 5% mark. And that's being generous. So they get to go into the Undercity. They get Thrown in the Dead 3. Now, if we'd have stifled that guy earlier, or if we'd have played the Murktide instead of the Phyexian Dreadnought. Now, we didn't know our opponent was going to draw a Loran. They're much more likely to draw a Solitude type effect. Okay, they hit Solitude. Let's just concede this game and move on with our lives. Oh dear, oh dear. What do we want to do differently, if anything? Yikes. Yeah, this isn't great, is it? Our threats are not amazing, is what I'm discovering here. Like, are we just trimming on threats even more and just trying to keep our opponent down? I think so. Doesn't look great, but I think it's kind of where we have to be here. Yikes. Yeah, our deck does not feel threat dense enough. And like our threats require too much work. Alright, so we can ponder with a Daze available. A Brainstorm as well. So we should be able to find the things we need with this hand. We just have to make sure those things are good enough. Right, let's get a basic island. Start pondering. A Wasteland is actively good. The other cards, not so much. But we're going to Brainstorm Shuffle next turn anyway. So I think this is acceptable. So Wasteland allows us to deal with a Cavern to turn back on our counter spells. Our opponent has played an Ancient Tomb and a Lotus Petal. Going to see a 3-drop here. Or are they going to snowball into a 4-drop? Chalice of the Void, X is 1. Again, I don't think we can beat this, so let's say no. They will crack this Lotus Petal, and then we will Wasteland their Balin's Tomb, and we're going to try and just stunt them on mana. That's the plan here. Is your Lotus Petal a thing you're relying on here? Like, I don't really know what else our hand does. If we... I think our best line is to Wasteland our opponent out of the game and hope that it sticks. Oh, wow. That is fascinating. So this definitely feels like an important linchpin for their plan here. Alright. That is interesting to me. Okay, so we're going to try and Wasteland our opponent off of mana. Since they prize that Lotus Petal quite highly there. Like, we're playing Phyexian Dreadnought. Our deck is trying to win the game via cheesing our opponent in some way, shape or form. So I'll accept what happens. An Ancient Tomb, sure. And no further play. Right. So we've drawn through both of the cards we put on top with the Ponder. So the top of our deck is fresh, so we don't need to play a fetch out here. We can pass, and then we can cast a Brainstorm in response to something, and then decide what we're doing. I think our opponent's going to play a Cavern of Souls here. Interesting. I think I'm pretty happy to Brainstorm for velocity here. We're looking for things. Okay, I guess we don't need a second Dismember right now and put this land on top. We'll draw this land. Then we can crack and do the Brainstorm stuff, or we can... So we can choose to crack this fetch land or not. A Chrome Mox. Am I stifling this Chrome Mox's ability? No, I don't think so. What is that? A Source to Power Shares, okay. So they're going to lose their Lotus Petal here, I think. Archon of Emeria. That's fine. We can just kill this. Do we want the top card of our library? I don't believe we do. It's a bit painful for the Dismember here, but it's better than keeping their creatures in play. Slip out the back. Okay, I think we're going to Brainstorm. Yikes. I guess we put these two back. Play fetch land. Crack the fetch land. So we could bounce this Chrome Mox. Or we could dress down a creature they play. Guy. It's not a very exciting guy, is it? Okay. I don't think we need to do anything there. Force of Will. It's not that exciting, is it? We will play out this land, though. Comes in tapped, so we need to get that out of the way. So we can bounce this Chrome Mox at end step if we want to, or we can deploy the dress down. I think we're waiting on the dress down. But we can deploy it in response to something we can't counter if they go like Cavern. We can take a few hits from this Archon. The Ancient Tomb is doing some work on their life total for us. We just need to stop anything scarier. Hit and play. Just get rid of this Chrome Mox. Our opponent's struggling for mana. May as well try and abuse that. We can also use this Brazen Borrower as a removal spell for that Archon of area. Alright. This Wasteland will be useful soon. We actually want to play this on our turn here. so that we have access to our spells in the face of the Archon of Emeria. We could counterspell or stifle this Chrome Mox. This is our opponent's only spell for the turn right now. Are we just going to keep attacking their mana base? I think so. Like, it ended up being a 3 for 2. Are we going to crash? They're not. Relatively finely poised game. What is this? Cracking. Oh, no, they changed their mind. Interesting. So, if they want to trade here, so we have a 5-turn clock, they have a 5-turn clock, but we get to attack first. Yeah, I'm down to clown. No, we have some very situational Magic the Gathering cards in hand. See what happens when we get rid of our Ancient Tomb. Do we play this out and represent Force of Will, or do we hold it for Brainstorm? I think we hold it for Brainstorm. We got 3 cards in hand, so we're kind of representing Force of Will anyway. A basic planes. If our opponent's not blocking their attack in here, we have the Superior Clock. Swords to Plowshares. Okay, we no longer have the Superior Clock. Understood. Slip out the back. What a terrible Magic the Gathering card. I guess we're going to continue this attempt at a game. Alright, so that does give us a little bit of life though. Buys us 2 turns against the current clock we're facing. We can slip this out the back on an emergency turn if we need to, but that doesn't feel great. A Murktide Regent. Hello. Blue, blue. Ponder, Daze, Brainstorm, Dismember. Actually, we need to think about what one's exile because we have a Mystic Sanctuary available, don't we? Alright, so we don't need this Daze, I don't think. I think I'm more likely to want... this Force of Will. So if we put Ponder, Daze, Brainstorm, Dismember, Brainstorm. And then once we're ahead, we can then just get the Force of Will going. So if our opponent has an Ancient Tomb and activates it, we can kill them next turn. A Solitude. So we don't get to stifle this because of the Archon of Emeria here. That is an annoying one. That gives us a lot more turns, but then our opponent can just draw some mana, and that's going to be bad for us. Right, so the little bird that could is going to continue pecking away. Oh no, they found a spell. Another Archon of Emeria. Okay. Force of Negation. What does that do? Not a lot, but maybe something. Now we don't want to just fire off his dress down because we kind of need that to make our other creatures tick. And now I'm kind of feeling the ponders and stuff we brought it out. But if this was just a matchup where the Chalice sticks, then I'm going to be glad to be drawing things like Force of Negation instead of Ponder. Okay, so now we have a plan. I will play out this land, I think. The dress down allows us to play multiple spells on our turn. Alright, so we're going to take some damage here. What is this? Chalice of the Void, X equals 1. Is this the fight that we want to make? No, I don't believe it is. This stops them ploughing our guy. So we could just put this Force of Will on top of our library. But we take 4 and then we have to kill them on the backswing. If they leave one guy back, that's enough to stop them dying. Do I want a Force of Will on top of my library? I think we can draw the card from this and see if we want to draw the Force of Will for our turn. Okay. Wish we'd have counterspelled this Chalice of the Void now. Why didn't we counterspell the Chalice of the Void? Kind of made a right mess of this one, haven't we? But if we counterspell this... No. If we counterspell this, we don't get to make the Dreadnoughts, and then we take 4, and then the Dreadnoughts aren't good anymore. Yeah, so we're trying to draw Borrower now. Many, many Dreadnoughts. We can play a Dreadnought. If we get hit by the Chalice trigger, we can then stifle the Chalice trigger, which will then get countered by the Chalice. Are we just dead here? Doesn't feel like we're alive. Yeah, we were supposed to counterspell this Chalice, and that was just a bit of a punt for me. I think the problem I have here is if we don't counterspell... If we counterspell that Chalice, we don't get to play the dress down. Alright, so just going to make lethal damage here. Sure. So my problem here is, if we counterspell the Chalice, then we don't get to make the dress down. Then we get attacked for 4, and we go to 3. Then we... yes, so we don't counterspell this. And then we go to our turn. We still can't make Dreadnought using any other fashion because of these. So we then go to our opponent's end step, and then play the dress down once we're on 3 life. Then we play as many Dreadnoughts as we want, and we lose. Right? So the only play we have available to us is to play the dress down at end step. Try and draw the Borrower to bounce this, and then play the Dreadnoughts. That's the reason I made this play. And I thought I punted by doing that, but actually the maths is solid on that, right? We lose if we counterspell this, which is a horrible place to be. I guess the other option is, yeah, because if we draw a Dismember, we die because we can't cast it. If we draw a Borrower and we bounce this, we buy ourselves another turn. But if we were going to draw the Borrower, we could have bounced this and made all these Dreadnoughts and been in a better spot anyway. So yeah, we were correct not to counterspell this. We were just undone by our opponent's superior tools there. Alright, let's go to the final round. We are trying to avoid the 0-5. Not a great sign. Alright. What does our opening hand do? It requires more mana. We don't have a cantrip to make that happen. We do have a lot of good interaction, but I don't think I can keep a 1-lander. So we're going to have to mulligan. Alright, this is a hand with a plan. We'll keep this. We'll throw back the Murktide Regent. We're a long way off of that being useful. So we can start the game off with the basic island. Turn 2, we can dress down, make Phyexian Dreadnought. Maybe have a good time. Maybe have a horrible time. We'll see. If we need to, we can Wasteland as well. We're going to get, okay, a Grim Monolith. So we're looking more combo town here. I think we're more inclined to just do our thing, put our threat down, see if we can fade one more turn. So we could dress down, Dreadnought, Wasteland, or Dreadnought Borrower. I think that's our strongest route through this game. Like, we could have Wastelanded instead this turn. The One Ring. Yep, that's pretty good. Now we can bounce that next turn instead of Wastelanding. And see if we can stop our opponent from accruing too much card advantage from it. But that does give them the ability to replay it. Lion's Eye Diamond. That's interesting. Another Lion's Eye Diamond. Okay. I'm not liking where this is going. Alright, so we're going to get Echo of Eons here. So we get to bounce this One Ring, though. And then this will get shuffled away. It does give our opponent more Storm, if that's what they're attempting here. Alright, so we've got a counter spell. We've got a Stifle for Storm triggers. So that's something. We've got a threat available to us when we get round to it. Burgy. I'm going to say no to this one. We're going to pitch the Cryptic Coat. Our opponent could just do a massive Galvanic Relay here. But we have Stifle next turn for their Storm spell, in theory. Another Diamond. Monolith. Could be a very large Galvanic Relay here. A Burning Wish. Okay, is this just going to be another Echo of Eons? We spin the wheel again? Could be. They've got 11 Storms, so if they can just keep spinning. Empty the Warrens. Okay. And then they can use the Grim Monolith for the mana, and that's a lot of goblins. We do not have a blue mana here. So this is going to probably beat us, one would imagine. If we can play a Dreadnought right now. That doesn't do it. We had to play a Dreadnought right now, so we gobble one of these up, take a bunch, attack them. No, even that's not good enough. Alright, our opponent smashed us pretty hard there. Okay. I would like some Null Rods, a Grafdigger's Cage, Hydroblasts seem useful here, Hullbreacher, Force of Negation. Brazen Borrower might be okay for doing some of those lines that we did in that one. Stifle is good, so that's nice. Dressed out, like, there is like an option to just cut our Phyrexian Dreadnoughts. As sad as that is, they do not feel great to me. We can keep one in, I suppose. That's something. We got the Stifles, we got the Coat, and then just try and win the game with Borrowers, Hullbreachers, Murktide Regents. We're just trying to stop our opponent from winning the game. That's an option available to us. We could even play a Surgical, but Surgical tends not to be amazing in these sorts of matchups. Yeah, I think that's what we're doing. I think we are playing the stop our opponent from winning the game and then maybe win later on. Okay. We will keep this because we have the Ponder to do our stuff. Although, are we casting Ponder on turn 1? Probably not. We're probably holding up Stifle because our opponent feels very turn 1-ish. You know, they're trying to do Lotus Petals into Monoliths, into Lion's Eye Diamond, Crack, Echoes. So those sorts of lines are the ones we want to be hitting here. Now, we have issues with Defense Grid. But there's only so much we get to do, really. Which is hopefully a matchup where we have the tools to win it. My opponent's mulligan to 5. So if they go super low on a Lion's Eye Diamond Echo of Eon's hand, then we get to blow that out with a counterspell. Yep, that's what our opponent's looking for right now. So we are doing okay. They've gone to 3. They can go to 2. They're unlikely to go to 1. But if they see 7 bad cards when they go down to 2, then maybe they will. But the fact that our opponent just has a we start the game again button is really nice for them. Right, so we can brainstorm on our opponent's end turn to try and set up the Dreadnought if we need to. There is an Ancient Tomb. Is it doing anything? Doesn't look that way. Okay, so we've missed on land. That's fun, isn't it? Oh lord. I guess that means Murktide Regent is probably going away here. And I like a lot of the other cards we have available to us. So we'll draw this Brainstorm back. Let's ponder, see if we find a land. We did find a land. Okay. Play this and crack it now. Hold up our stuff like we did before. And try and make a Phyrexian Dreadnought when the time is right. A Lion's Eye Diamond. We will allow this one. If they want to discard their whole hand and go in on one spell, I'll allow that. A land is nice. Let's make this guy. Let's stifle this. And we're still holding up Daze, Hydroblast, Force of Will. So we've got a decent chunk of options. We've now got a very impressive clock. Maybe we do want Phyrexian Dreadnoughts. I don't know. It's just so awkward. Right, our Dazes might look bad if they can get Metalcraft going. I think a Brainstorm here is in order. Okay, just Ponder and Delta. We can go back. Play this, crack this. Let's put this Stifle on top of our library. Ponder. Stifle and Null Rod. Okay, I'll take the Null Rod, please. My opponent shouldn't be able to win through this. I got Force of Will and Daze. Alright. This is for trying to win a single match. Cryptic Coat is slow. Do we want a Dreadnought so we can just power out some wins here? Or are we just hoping to use our Stifles as protection? We're kind of in that same question we were in before. I think just the one Dreadnought is probably where we want to be. Like, obviously it looked fine there. But we just kind of want to make land drops, play any guy, and just sort of brick them. Now if that Dreadnought was just a coach, that's also fine here. Oh, God. Mystic Sanctuary. You suck. But we have a Null Rod. We have a Force of Will. I think we do have to keep this. Maybe we'll draw an island, and then we can brainstorm away this horrible Sanctuary, and we'll be alright. Our opponent kept 7, so this is defense grid, so we have to say no to the defense grid. Probably get rid of the Murktide at this point. If we don't counter that spell, we never get to counter anything ever again. Basic island, not a basic island. Alright, tapped Mystic Sanctuary. Yuck. Can we get a match win? Just one match win. That's all I ask. Another Ancient Tomb. Chrome Mox. We don't have any response. It's just the situation we're in right now. A Bergie. Grim Monolith. This is going to be like a little relay turn. And Lion's Eye Diamond, are we just spinning the wheel here? We are spinning the wheel. Okay, we have 2 Force of Wills. Our hand is way better now. If they find a defense grid, then we can counter that and another spell. If they just put a load of goblins into play, we lose the game. A Grim Monolith. This doesn't take them off of goblins mana. They might just be on Burning Wishes, but they probably do have some amount of Empty the Mornings just in their deck. I'd be very surprised if they didn't have 2 to 3 copies in their deck. A defense grid. Okay, so we have to counterspell this. We will pitch a Ponder, I think. The One Ring. We have the Hullbreacher, but is the Hullbreacher going to be too slow? I think it might be. Like, if we could untap into Hullbreacher, then I would let this resolve. But that's not the situation we're in right now. We are 2 mana away from Hullbreacher, and then if they get another turn of activating this, then it kind of all goes a bit wrong for us then, because this is worth 3 cards at that point. Alright. We've bought ourselves a turn. Grafdigger's Cage is not useless. I will take not useless at this point. A Brainstorm. Daze is good. Minor Misstep is good. These cards are all good. Are we just trying to stop our opponent right now? Actually, Daze... Is Daze good? Daze probably isn't that good, although these are tapped. Okay, so we don't want the Daze. I think we do want the land. Would I rather have a Misstep or a Cage? They both kind of do similar things, weirdly. So I'm going to put the Cage away, play this, crack this. Because this counters the LED that would enable the thing anyway, but this also counters other spells. And then if we can get to next turn, we can let them just do their draw 7, and then we just end the game with our Hullbreacher, because they don't get cards, we do, and we also get all the treasure in the world. Rite of Flame. This is their only red source for the turn, so countering this should be pretty good. Alright, they had a Simian Spirit Guide. And they got another Rite of Flame. Okay, this is bad. 7 mana. Is this Wish into Goblins? It is Wish into Goblins. How many goblins is this? 6. That's 12 goblins. So we block. We take 11. And then we die. Okay. We lose? I think we lose. We count that second Rite of Flame instead. We're probably in a better spot, but we don't know they're just double Rite of Flame in there. They didn't have any red sources, so I just had to assume they didn't have more. But they did. Okay, so 10 goblins and a gamble. So we block 1, we take 9. We block the next one, we take 7. 9 plus 7 is our life total. And our life total is going to be 1 less because of this Flooded Strand. So how do we beat this? Is the question I'm coming back to here. How do we beat this? Cryptic Coat. This can win us the game. This is how we win the game. We have our 1 Phyrexian Dreadnought in our deck. We play the Cryptic Coat. So our opponent has put an Echo of Eons into their graveyard. They don't have any blue mana right now. I think we are just playing the Coat here. If we find the Phyrexian Dreadnought, then we can kill our opponent next turn if they don't hold back enough blockers. And this might force them to hold back loads of blockers. Or they might think, we're just going to go for it. We found the Borrower. That is not good enough. But our opponent now has to consider whether or not they need to hold back enough blockers that we don't one-shot them. So they'd have to keep back 3 blockers and attack us for 7. Let's see what they go for here. Okay, they're just attacking with everything. That's unfortunate for us. So we can block 2 next turn, and that's taking 7. Oh, we were 1 away! We were 1 away. Unbelievable. 1 away. Well, that's the end of this league. And yeah, sad times all round. We got 3 game wins, no match wins. Let's talk about this steaming pile of a deck. Alright, so as you can imagine, I think this deck is bad. Now, we did get somewhat unfortunate with some of our hands. We mulliganed to 5 a lot in a 19 land deck like this, which is not really what you'd expect with our Brainstorms and Ponders and things here. and the fact that our curve is relatively low. But if we're looking at how we're actually trying to progress and win the game, that is where this deck kind of falls down. So we have a 2-card combo of Phyrexian Dreadnought and either a 2-mana spell or a 1-mana spell. So maybe this comes down turn 3 as our earliest. Like sometimes this will be a turn 2 threat. You know, sometimes we'll have this, but sometimes we're going to have to like cantrip and find it. So maybe a turn 2 threat, maybe a turn 3 threat. Cryptic Coat is a turn 3 threat, but it's quite a low power threat. Obviously, if you can set up the Dreadnought, then it becomes pretty good, but it's not an exceptional threat just to try and win the game. Murktide Regent. We're not casting this until turn 4, probably at the earliest. And generally it's going to be a later play. So we are a tempo deck, right? We're trying to play things like Dazes, keep our opponent off balance, 2-for-1s and Force of Will. But we're not putting our foot on the gas in a good enough way to justify being a tempo deck, if you know what I mean. Like, we don't have reliable threats. Like, if we were playing Delver as well, we just have like another threat that can get in there, start applying damage early on, make some of our tempo things good, and maybe we just Delver people out sometimes, and that's fine. But the problem is, our threats are so slow to get online that if we Daze in the first few turns because we have to, we're setting ourselves back a turn, but our opponent isn't getting set back a turn. Maybe they lose a spell, but they still got the mana to develop. And it just means it's easier for them to overcome what we eventually do. We're kind of relying on Phyrexian Dreadnought being good enough. And we saw quite often that it wasn't. Like, we got Lorana the third path, but it was getting solituded, it was getting ploughed, and yeah, we gained a big bunch of life. But we're so light on threats, and our threats make us work really hard for them. Like, we have to fill our graveyard, we have to find the other combo piece. Like, this, you know, takes a lot of time and mana to be a threat on its own, really. Because a 3-2 isn't really good enough for 3 mana in Legacy. But, you know, over multiple turns you can recur this and get more and more power. So that's fine in the long term. But we're not trying to play the long term. We're trying to play Dazes and Force of Wills. This deck is just pulling at a lot of different angles in a way that I don't think is viable. Now, I've played Slipknot decks before, and I've played the mono-blue Dark Depths deck. And what the Dark Depths deck, the Dark Depths Phyrexian Dreadnought deck did, like, obviously I played it as a bit of a meme, but it actually performed quite well. And the reason why it performed quite well is because it had dedicated ways of making its threats. So, yes, you had Phyrexian Dreadnought, and like Phyrexian Dreadnought and Merit Lage are game-ending style threats, right? But we had those pieces to make that happen. We weren't reducing our own mana count with Dazes and Wastelands in the same way. Were we running Dazes? We might have been running Dazes now I think about it. But we weren't running Wasteland because we couldn't afford that many slots, I don't think. Or we were running less Wastelands and they were a spell slot, maybe. So we had that. But then we had ways of protecting our guy. So we were all about making a big guy, protecting that guy and winning the game. This deck doesn't protect the guy that well because we quite often have to use our spells just to get our guy into play. Like, oh, a Chalice. Okay, I guess we have to counterspell it. Now I play our guy. Okay, you've got a Solitude. Now what? You know, I've got a few turns to try and rebuild, but maybe that's not getting there. So the other deck I played was very all in on the guys it was making. So it had the Knot of this world. You only need one combat step with a Merit Lage. Obviously, I'm a big Merit Lage fan, as you all know if you watch my channel. But that deck felt like it was more coherent in what it was doing. Like, we have this long game thing that, yes, it can sometimes be a combo thing, but generally, like, this card on its own is a long game increasing value deck. You know, so we're going to be playing a longer game, bouncing this, replaying this, bouncing this, replaying this, you know, getting extra blockers that act as removal, pressuring our opponent's life total, forcing removal out their hand or whatever. We bounce it, we go in again. You know, we kind of accrue value over time. Then the rest of our deck is like, okay, we're pitching 2 cards to make this happen. Pitching 2 cards to make this happen. Pitching 2 cards to make this happen. We're trying to bounce our own lands, set our opponent off balance. You know, we're trying to constrict our opponent's resources for a limited window of time. And that doesn't really play in with Cryptic Coat. So Cryptic Coat isn't really working with just Phyrexian Dreadnought. Now, if we were playing a full-on Cryptic Coat deck, then I could be on board with this. So if we were playing Lazav and Cryptic Coat, perhaps, in a blue-black shell, with Hunted Horror and Phyrexian Dreadnought, all of a sudden you've got more things that make Cryptic Coat good. You've also got more payoffs for what we're, trying to assemble here, with the Stifles and the Dress Downs. And, maybe we could run something like a Torpor Orb as well alongside it, which can stymie some decks in the format right now, Goblins, Initiative, there's quite a few things that would get annoyed by having to deal with that. So maybe that's a better option. I think our opponent who was playing the blue-black build had the right idea, because we can't really control stuff on board. And if our threat doesn't stick because we're mono blue, we can't remove our opponent's threats. So our whole plan is to make our guy, make sure it's good enough, make sure it lasts long enough, and that our opponent doesn't play anything that is comparable in power. That is a lot to ask for mono blue. That's why I'll probably put it in the description of this video, the mono blue one I played for December, where we were trying to make sure that what we were doing was really powerful and that we would be reliable doing it and it would get there. We had more protection for our creature. That was what we were trying to do. We're trying to make something that ends the game and ride it. This deck is trying to make something that's good enough to win the game, but it's not as good as at riding the game out with it, because we have counter spells, but those counter spells need to be pointed elsewhere. We're not as dedicated to doing the things that just immediately win the game as the other deck I played. There's a lot of similarity between these lists, but I think not having the Cryptic Coat would kind of work better with this. I think you either need to lean more into the Cryptic Coat, either as like a late game engine, like a Jeskai Stoneblade control deck, for example, or you need to play more stuff that goes into the coat and it's just bananas. So that is another option you have, and that encourages you to play slightly more cantrips as well, I think. So maybe we want a couple of Preordains or Portents in here, which then makes our Murktide Regents better anyway, because we've got a little bit more cantrips going through. We can also use things like Mishra's Bauble if we wanted to on our own top of our library to make our Cryptic Coats better. So, there's a whole bunch of different options. I think Cryptic Coat is a cool card, and I'm definitely going to fiddle around with it. I don't think this is the shell for Cryptic Coat. Now, I can certainly see how if you just reliably make turn 2 Dreadnoughts with this deck and your opponent can't answer it, how you're going to do well. The ceiling of this deck is very high, but I think the floor of it is abysmally low, to the point where I would not recommend playing it in Legacy right now. But it's a start, right? We're testing these things, seeing how they work out. It didn't work out for us today at all. It was a abject failure in every way. But I think we learned some important things about the new card Cryptic Coat, how it works in terms of this sort of setup, and how we can improve upon that. I don't think we're ready for full-on scroll racking our Dreadnoughts back, but if we've got something like Lazav, maybe we could be doing some graveyard shenanigans. Maybe we could have things like Careful Study in our deck. That might be an interesting one. We could sort of have a reanimation theme. But then again, if we're trying to do like Lazav and Cryptic Coat, I guess Cryptic Coat, you want lower CMC stuff. Maybe we want more like the scroll that manifests as well. So you just have things like that. But I think just like Careful Study, maybe you can put in some like reasonable reanimation stuff as well. And then your Lazav gets to become other things. Maybe Lazav just wants to be played in like a Rescaminator type list instead. There's like a sort of mid-game engine if things go wrong, as well as like its own version of Vesuvian Drifter, because that's kind of what Lazav is, right? It's like Vesuvian Drifter. I'm thinking more about the blue-black deck we played than I am about this, because this just didn't really work. We can't control the board effectively. We can't protect our creature effectively, because Legacy is so powerful that all our counter spells are getting pointed at these things that are going to be breaking us, like chalices and things, especially in this format right now, with more chalices than we've seen for a while because there's so many Ancient Tomb decks. I think trying to play a deck where we're trying to resolve 2 1-drops on like turn 2 or 3 of the game at the same time is asking a lot, especially when, Fatal Push is quite a common removal spell now because of the Bug Beans deck is the most played deck right now. So that's a problem. some opponents can actually just beat a Phyrexian Dreadnought attacking once. Like, we play a Dreadnought on turn 2, we attack on turn 3, we're probably dead by then against goblins, and maybe we can't even interact with them with counterspells meaningfully. So there's a lot of issues there, I think, with this deck. And unfortunately, SLIPNOUGHT was not the way to be today. However, you've not seen the last of Cryptic Coat on this channel. We're definitely going to try it out in some more dedicated shells, and I'm curious to see how it pans out. As for me, I am done for today. Remember to like and subscribe. It really does help the channel. And I checked earlier today. Obviously, this is going to be released a little bit after I've recorded it, though. But I checked earlier today, and I'd broken 2,500 on the channel by a little bit. So thank you very much for everyone who's helped subscribe to the channel and make that a thing. It does mean a lot to me, and I hope that you like Legacy as much as I do. With that, I am done, so thank you so much for watching, and goodbye. If you'd like to support me in the channel, please check out my Patreon. It has a free guide to budget turbo depths, as well as 3 tiers of support. A low-cost one that enters you into my monthly raffle for a free donation deck on the channel, a mid-tier subscription that gives you access to my detailed turbo depths guide that is updated every month, as well as regular articles, and lastly, the higher tier gives you all of the above, as well as a monthly donation deck for my channel. If you're interested in supporting the channel this way, please check out the link in the description.